welcome back to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions, your home for all things psycho. This is your host, Daniel Moeller, and today, I'm going a little modern and mainstream lately. I'm sorry for those who follow my channel and they rely on me strictly staying within that kind of like 80s black and white vibe, and there will still be a lot of that in the channel, but um, I am covering, some recent books here lately, I think, from Image Comics that, I might be taking a further dive into in the future. And so, Image Comics, Robert Kirkman, for those that do not know, Robert Kirkman is the writer responsible for The Walking Dead, Invincible. If you don't know what those properties are, even as a non comic book person, you should know what Walking Dead is. So, Robert Kirkman's a big deal, and he has become one of the primary entities at Image Comics. He's literally one of the driving forces, I think, in the past decade for Image Comics. And although a lot of people would consider Image Comics indie, I don't. I consider them one of the big, mainstream comic book companies. Personally, I do consider them mainstream. But Image is great in that it does provide a pathway for a lot of independent artists and cartoonists, and I think there are a lot of independent properties and books within Image, but sometimes Image just gets so big, and this is one of those cases that I don't really consider it indie. And so Robert Kirkman's Skybound uh, imprint, I would consider very mainstream, but wow, does he find the right talent? So when I heard that Robert Kirkman had acquired the rights to G.I. Joe and Transformers, two of the 80s IPs that defined my childhood, most specifically G.I. Joe, way more than Transformers ever did. G.I. Joe is my thing. I wanted to see what Robert Kirkman would do with it. Because I trust Robert Kirkman as a writer. I really think that he knows how to sell a story. I think he knows how to tell a story in the context of comics as a medium. I've read some of his books as novels as well, but as a comics writer, he really knows how to work well with an artist to create that sequential delivery that I think very few writers in the industry actually understand. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good writers out there, but do you really know how to tell a story within the medium of comics as opposed to film or literature? It's a completely different element entirely. So he generated within his Skybound imprint what's called the Energon Universe (EU), and the Energon Universe is it's kind of like his mix of these two properties. So in the past, there has been crossovers between G.I. Joe and Transformers, but they've never really existed in the same universe. He's trying to create this and kind of rewrite or redo these properties in such a way that they coexist in the same universe. And not just that they're shoved together like they've been in the past, of just like, oh, okay, like that, like really make them integral elements of the same world together, which I found exciting. Nothing will ever beat the Marvel Comics Larry Hama run of G.I. Joe, ever, in my opinion. But I'm not expecting it to do that, and I'm not wanting it to do that. I do want to see something new and something different, but just also well done. And I trust Kirkman. So he launched it with this book called Void Rivals, which really doesn't have anything to do, well, nothing specific to do with G.I. Joe or Transformers, but is kind of just a new element that he created to kind of help build into this wider universe. So it's like an introduction into this universe. And it's a very fun, clever concept. Very simple. You have two civilizations, interstellar civilizations, that actually live on the same planet that are at war. And they're vying for resources to continue this years long, centuries long war. And there are two fighter pilots that crash land on the same planet after chasing one another from each of these civilizations. And they hate each other. They absolutely revile one another. And to make a long story short, they learn that they have to get along in order to survive, because they need to get off this planet and fulfill their missions. And so that's the basic premise. Very simple, very enemy mine like. But man, oh man, again, Robert Kirkman's delivery just rocks the house. So we've got Lorenzo De Felici as the artist. We've got two colorists working on multiple chapters, multiple issues. We got Russ Wooten as the letterer. I don't know if Lorenzo De Felici works on the computer or not. Based upon the way I see the ink work, I think he's actually using regular tools, manual tools, brush, and possibly nibs. But maybe not. I mean, there are people who are skilled enough that they can use computer brushes and make it look real. So Kyle Strom is a really good example of that. He works with regular materials, but when he's working professionally, he'll do it on the computer or on a tablet because it's faster. But you wouldn't be able to tell in many cases. That's, some people do get that skilled. I'm not generally a fan of that work. The reason why I bring this up is because in modern comics, it's so hard for me to tell sometimes. And that frustrates me because I want to know if they delivered that line by hand or not. But I see a lot of areas that maybe he's just deliberately leaving rough. But wow, he does a really great job. And his characterization, I mean, what's really fun and interesting is that these characters' faces are covered pretty much the whole time. Or at least most of the time. You start seeing their faces later in the book, later in the story. This contains the first 6 issues. But man, you can feel their expressions throughout. You don't need to see their faces. Lorenzo does such a good job of his body work and character work. The coloring is magnificent, and the lettering. Wow, that's one thing that really surprised me is how kind of sketchy Russ Wooten's lettering was, and just fun. It doesn't have this like professional look to it. Things, there's no concern over the letters being uniform in any way or to make sure they're all the same side. Just absolutely love this. They're all placed perfectly within the action. Hell yeah. So how this starts tying in, they're trying to get off the planet and they end up running into a transformer. They don't know that. They don't know what this is. And there's weird stuff going on, and it takes off. Again, eventually you do start to see their faces, And you start to see that they're actually very similar. And they live on this planet, or this ring, really, like a Dyson sphere sort of thing that surrounds a black hole called the Sacred Ring. And it's like they're channeling the energy of this black hole through this Dyson sphere. And I think that I'm speculating that that is the Energon energy, of the Energon universe, that powers the Transformers and also comes into play in G.I. Joe, and later on in the G.I. Joe series. Not to give spoilers, but this is kind of the buildup. So I think this is how this civilization ties into it. There's a lot of mystery, a lot of elements that come in, and mostly what this book is about is these two characters learning that their races, their civilizations, although they've hated on each other, they have talked about each other as these, horrific, almost demonic type races. They're actually pretty much exactly the same. They're very similar, and the truth of their histories were lost for the sake of keeping the war going. Like very much like the Dr. Seuss book. What's the name of it? The Butter Side Up. It's the two civilizations that are warring against each other because one civilization puts butter on the bottom of their bread and one civilization puts butter on the top of their bread. It's one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember the name of it. But it's a very similar concept, and it is it's done in a very sophisticated way, and it's done in such a way, again, credit to Kirkman, that it's not tiring. It doesn't feel like preaching in any way, shape, or form. So they work hard together they have to again work together, but they find out that in order to get off, they have to take parts of each of their ships and build something together in order to get out, and to get off the planet and to head back home. They eventually run into some like scavenger type aliens that link into Transformers later on. And so there's this tie in knowing that the Transformer race are a kind of an active element in this kind of cosmic universe that's very Star Warsy, Guardians of the Galaxy like. It's that sort of feel to it, which is really cool because I think actually Kirkman adds some fun Star Trek-y elements to where there is some highbrow stuff in this. The characters feel really real and alive. At first I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I didn't expect to really care about these characters for some reason. I don't know why I thought that, because I've read Kirkman before, but okay, two characters that are essentially the same and blah blah blah. But here, so you can see they live on two sides of that ring that surrounds this Dyson sphere or Dyson ring kind of thing that's channeling the energy. And then there's even elements of this where they're still battling one another, and they're still trying to work together, kind of, but they still don't trust each other. And this element plays through, even though they know the truth. They're still having to gain trust, and they're still battling with their loyalty to their particular civilizations. So it's a really engaging book all the way through. Here we see some more cameos of Transformers, and they're just cameos at this point. So after this, this has not ended. It actually, the 6 issues, I believe the series is still ongoing. It ends at a pretty tense point. It ends with this, as Kirkman does, of raising the stakes even higher. They're both getting betrayed by their civilizations. There's a spoiler alert. There's this sense that each of the civilizations are trying to keep the war going, and they want the war to keep going, and we don't really know why, the leaders of each of these civilizations. So that's pretty crazy. And Yeah. So they end up escaping, the two of them, because now they're both being chased to this kind of like not negative zone, like DMZ type area between the two, and that's how the this first volume ends. And I think from here things take off with Transformers, Duke, and Cobra Commander. I have not read Transformers or Duke. I've read Cobra Commander. I'm going to have a review of that later. Just recently at San Diego Comic Con, the writer and creator in chart, Daniel Warren Johnson. So the writer and artist for Transformers actually won an Eisner. So I got to check this out, even though I don't care as much about Transformers. I've always cared more about G.I. Joe. But I don't know. I'm hearing this is an amazing series, so I feel like I need to check it out. Congratulations to Daniel Warren Johnson. So yeah, this I didn't know. I was just like putting my toe in the water here. I don't collect modern comics. I haven't been a regular collector of like the Wednesday new new comic book pickup in a long time. After picking this up, yeah, I went out and I bought a bunch. So I have some stuff to review coming up. Um, Very surprised by Robert Kirkman. I'm not sure. Why should I be surprised? It's Robert Kirkman. But there's been many attempts to revive G.I. Joe in the past. I've not really been a fan of any of those revivals. My lord, I'm on board. I'm on board for this. I want to see where this goes. 100%. I'm going to go pick up some comics at my local comic shop. I'm going to order what I can't find. I'm going to try to get engaged in this universe. So that's pretty cool. It's a pretty nice feeling to have a modern comic that I'm excited about reading again. So thank you, Robert Kirkman, for that. Excellent book. If you've not checked out Void Rivals, it is a quality product for sure. I'm going to go check out the rest. Thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for more notifications. I'll see y'all later. Take care and keep it psycho.